music because the competition was so overwhelming that I felt the passion waning. And as the harp had always been my companion for a very long time, I could not afford losing that companion.
Good day, Lena. How are you doing?
Hello, Victoria. It's so nice to see you. Thank you. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I actually met your music before I get to talk to you because one of our
Yes.
Talking Harps founder, Javier, met you in a workshop last year and he gave me your music, your album. And recently you have released a new album, which I have the opportunity to listen to, and we're going to talk all about it. But before
Thank
we
you.
start, tell us a little bit about yourself, your music journey, and how did the harp came to the picture?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. Thank you. Well, honestly, I can't remember because I was so young, but I'm told by my parents that I was about maybe 4 or 5 years old, and my mom took me to a concert from a local harpist. She was a very active harpist at that time in the area, and she played Celtic harp and she improvised a lot. And I was so overwhelmed by the sound. The only thing I remember is this room full of people and this lady sitting at the harp, and like the sound for me, it was golden, glittering, it was bright. This is the only thing I remember from that concert. And apparently, I convinced everyone that I need to learn the harp. So, and I started learning the harp when I was 9 years old, and I got a pretty classical training at a music school, a combined classical training and also a focus on the folk music we have here in the Alps region, which is very typical for southern Germany and Austria, and maybe a little of Switzerland. We are all around Lake of Constance, and we share the same cultural um, values and music. It's very similar, although we are three different countries.
Hmm, that's interesting. So you have been playing the harp for many years then.
Yes, I started on recorder though and flute.
Mhm.
Um, but my flute teacher, I'm still in contact with her, and whenever I meet her, she loves to recall the story when she saw me at the harp for the first time, because she said, the moment you touched that harp, I knew I lost. Because you're gonna go for the harp and not the recorder or the flute. Yeah, but I think she's not bitter about it or anything.
So in the years that you have been playing the harp, and I love asking this question for the people who have been playing for a long time, how have the harp scene changed in the area that you're from? Because I'm all the way in Canada, you're in Germany. I know very little about the music scene in Germany, and I know a lot of people started with classical training because that was the thing that is available. But you also mentioned folk learning. So how things have evolved over the years with the harp and in your area there as well?
I think one very important factor is that back then there were no rental harps, and either your parents were rich enough to buy you a harp or you couldn't learn the harp. Now you can easily get a lever harp for 30 euro a month and you just try if that's your instrument. Back then, my parents decided to buy a harp for a lot of money. I still have that harp and I still love that harp. That is one thing that has changed a lot. About the folk music scene, actually, it has some kind of revival. There's some kind of new folk music, so it's trendy again. It's not uncool. When I was young, I played in a folk music band ensemble, and it was wow. was like your coolness factor went down the drains. It was, you were ruined at school playing a folk music ensemble. Still, I love that kind of music, so I did that with all my heart also. And I loved the classical training also. That is one factor. The second factor, of course, is the internet. You being in Canada, I'm in the south of Germany, and the internet is just a great resource for all of us, right? Back then, I felt like I was the only kid playing harp. There was no harp teacher in our town, so I went to Austria, so even another country, but it's only 20 minutes, so it's not that far. But here at my local school and in my local hometown, there was no one playing the harp. So it was very exotic, but also very lonesome. And nowadays, I mean, you can just connect. You have Facebook groups, you have YouTube channels like yours. You're connecting the world of harpists, and I love that. I feel so understood because I find, there's other freaks like me loving the harp. That's cool.
It is. And it actually, I think, opened me up to a lot of music possibility. You talk about folk revival, and I just think about when I learned the harp, um, I knew there was the orchestral harp, but I also know there's a lot you can do with a lever harp. So I didn't even thought much about, let's get classically trained. I did that in the piano already. That's cool. But let's try something different on the harp. And I just love that possibility.
That's true.
And speaking of possibility, you have decided to turn your love of the harp into a full-time career. And how has that change been for you? Because I imagine it's not easy being a musician full-time.
I think I wouldn't have dared make that decision if it wasn't for the circumstances. I quickly need to get into that a little longer. First, I studied music and English to become a teacher for teaching kids at high school music and English. But I changed that, two subjects, to German and English because I somehow felt that music was something I needed to do for myself and not for not so interested students at school. So after I did all that training, and it's a very long training, 6 years at university, 2 years in school, there were no jobs. So what is there to do? Still, I was not thinking about getting a professional career as a harpist, but I applied for a job at Lufthansa. Now, this is the point where everyone thinks, aha, flight attendant? No, 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 I was not a flight attendant. I was working at the ground in administration. I was an HR trainee, and after 1.5 years, I was HR manager and had a job there at Lufthansa. And then I got pregnant and moved back to the hometown of my husband, which is also my hometown, at Lake of Constance, and everything changed. So the question, how the decision to change my profession is so linked to me getting kids and having a family, I cannot really tell. Because what happened then is I was a full stay-at-home mom for over a year. I couldn't get back to the job. It was too far away. 4 hours, it's a long drive. So I got really bored, and although I was so tired by lack of sleep, I set up my website then and started being a part-time musician. And that gave me so much energy, and somehow it started going. I had students, the first gigs, and so on. I already did that back when I studied music, right? So it was just picking up that what I already did before. But yeah, that gave me so much energy. I knew I had to pursue that. But it was still not a decision like, okay, now I'm gonna change professions. Then I had my second child, and things were already going really well. And yeah, just in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I decided, okay, I'm gonna do that as a full-time job. That was 2021. But how has that changed? I can't really tell, because I didn't have kids back when I was working at a big company and back when I was working at school. So I can only compare my situation to other people having those kind of jobs. And what I see is, of course, my big advantages are that I'm really flexible. I work very flexible hours, and I can work around the needs of the family, right? When the kids need me, I can be there for them, and I can practice at night. I can teach my students in the morning when they are at school and kindergarten, and I can go to concerts and workshops on the weekend when my husband is here for the kids. So that's a big advantage. And also at the same time, it's a disadvantage because I'm always here. So I have to do two jobs at the same time every day. And when a kid is sick and I have my students, what should I do? So I think for me, it still is the best choice because it's very flexible. I can decide a lot on my own. There's no one cutting off my creativity and telling me do this, do that. I can be the musician I want to be. I can be the person I want to be, and I can work with who I want. And that's a big freedom for me and outweighs all disadvantages. Yeah.
I think that is so important for you as a musician to be able to sort of, make your call and decide who you want to be. And I'm so happy that you are able to make that switch and dive into music as a full-time job, because now we're benefiting from all the beautiful music, which we're going to talk about,
Yes,
including your most
thank
recent
you.
album. So I'm very thankful that you did it. And yes, I agree. You're wearing many hats, but I hope you're enjoying wearing both hats as what you're doing
Sure.
in the family and also as a musician.
Yeah, as I said, I don't think I have a choice really, because not doing what I love would make me so unhappy. It would make me a bad mother.
Mhm.
So it's win-win.
It is a win-win. I love it. Now, let's talk about your music style. You grew up in both the classical training and also some folk tradition. How would you describe your music now? What do you love to play?
Yeah, I was dreading that question because, yeah, I always have trouble to tell streaming
Yeah, they
portals
always ask you to put a little genre, right? What would
genre,
you?
right? And
Yeah.
I don't see myself in those options I have there. Yes, as you said, I have a lot of classical background, and certainly there are many structures and harmonical structures um, that derive from classical music. But also many of my pieces are influenced by the typical Alps region folk music, right? It's this waltzes and a lot of dancing music, and just the style of playing the harp. It's very typical. You muffle a lot, and so it gets very groovy. But that's not all. I was also influenced by not only my music school teaching, but also what I listened to, right? So I was deeply influenced by Jan Tiersen. He's the composer to the film music of Amelie and other films, by the way. And I really loved his music. And also Ludovico Einaudi. I think you can see some of the structure he uses in my music, which also brings me to even more minimalistic music. Maybe new classic. I don't know. So if I were to find a word for it, my definition would be new, traditional, classic with pop music in it, because I love to listen to pop music a lot and I love to play pop music. So I'm pretty sure you can find the rhythmic structures of pop music, the syncopated melodies, and the chords, like the sus chords, for example, or maybe a little more jazzy chords. In not many pieces, but some of the pieces you can find. And I guess that's from the pop music I listened to as a teen. Yeah.
So you're drawing inspiration from everything that you have interest and touch upon.
Yes,
That's kind
definitely.
of become your unique mix of sound. And is that
Exactly.
something that we can expect in this album that you just released? And I'm going to let you say the name of the album, but we're looking at a drawing that is on the cover of the album. Tell us about this album and what we can expect in there.
Yeah. Okay, the name of the album is Bodenseewell, which can be translated to Waves on Lake of Constance. This is the Lake of Constance. It's pretty famous here. Um, yes, and the idea behind the whole CD album is the feeling of being at home. So I got my inspiration from being here in this area and playing here actually. At that time, after I released my last album, Herzstück, I played a weekly gig at the local spa, and that was turned out to be super, super important in the whole process. Back then, I didn't know, of course. So I played at the local spa, and I was totally focused on my harp because a lot of naked people were running around me, which is highly irritating if you're not used to it and you're trying to focus on the harp and you are the only one wearing clothes in the room. Strange situation. And I had to play 3 hours every week. And as I don't like to repeat myself too often, I did not have enough repertoire. I played the small harp because there was not much room in there. So I started improvising back then. Not this fiddling around at home improvising, but this make it sound like a proper piece because people are listening. Albeit only naked people. That made it easier for me because it was not like a concert situation. It was kind of a really relaxed situation at a spa, right? So everyone was relaxed and I kind of was relaxed as well. So I improvised a lot and I played that was directly at the Lake of Constance, the shores, like 5 meters away from the water. And yeah, so I think I got my inspiration from the nature and summer vibes. It's a pretty summer vibe CD. It's good mood. It's not very melancholic. It's bright. It's fun, right? So what I did back then was I videotaped myself, or I recorded with the mobile, being very careful not to have naked people running around, right? So I recorded all my snippets, and some of them were perfect as they were. Not many, but some of them just stayed. Many of them stuck in my head and developed into a piece throughout the next weeks. And then I still had those thousands of video snippets on my phone, and I went through them once I decided, okay, I'm gonna do a new CD. What could be the topic? Which pieces do I want to include? Which do I want to record that I haven't recorded already? So I was thinking about that, and suddenly this topic evolved. This, okay, all these pieces have something to do with my home, with me living here at the beautiful shores on Lake of Constance, and with me being in nature and with summer and just having a good time playing the harp and being in a flow state, in a state where everything is just fine, right? So this is the basic idea behind that CD. So Bodenseewell, which is also a track on my last album, got a new chance, and I recorded it as a duo. Because I knew, okay, this is gonna be the title of the whole album, because this is what holds everything together, right? So yeah, that's the idea behind Bodenseewellen. And for me, it's not just the music. Of course, the music is the centerpiece of everything, but it's also the artwork by a local artist. She's also very, very rooted here in the area as well. She was brought up here, and she is also a big fan of the Lake of Constance. And I decided to cooperate with her and buy her artwork for my cover, right? So now on my CD, you can see this artwork of her. And it's not only the artwork and the music, it's also the texts. I have a very long booklet explaining all the ideas behind my pieces, right? And I even have a little poem in there, yes, which I cannot present now because it's in German. Sorry for that.
That's okay. But I think that would give us an incentive to buy the album, read the booklet, and for those who don't speak German, you can plop it into Google Translate and see what you get.
Yeah, that would be interesting, because Google Translate somehow has its own poetry, right?
Right? We'll let you know what came out on the other end when we translate it.
I'd be very interested in that.
Yes. But to go back your album, I had the opportunity to listen to it. And I just want to say that I really can feel the joy and the calm of being by the water. Like it really comes through in the music very well. And I'm using it as the music that I put in my ear if I need to just have a moment of calm and peace. That became one of my go-to albums now to do that. So I think, you capture that sense of sort of summer good vibe really well into your music. And kudos to you and the artist to present such a beautiful packaging to the album too. Because you think about nowadays, we go to download an album, we get the track, no one ever touches the physical album anymore. But I cannot tell you how much joy I got when I received this physical album from Javier, and I get to look at the artwork, which you told me was also created by another female artist, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, this was the first cooperation here, because I really, I like to support each other, right?
Mhm.
They those artists need my support, I need their support. So this is win-win for everyone. And my first proper album, I already published one back in university times, but that was kind of home recorded and not professionally recorded. But the first professional album, Herzstück, that I published in 2020, end of 2020, so yeah, was also designed by a local female artist. And this album, again, I picked a female artist. The next album, though, I think will be a male local artist, namely my dad. So yeah, because I will not tell you too much about the next album because right now it's still just the future. Yes. Though I've already recorded it in my recording marathon.
Yeah, you had a very intensive recording marathon, which I had the chance to follow on your social media.
Yeah.
That looked like a really, really tough couple of days that you powered through. How was that for you? Looking back at what you had to do to put this album together, how was that experience like for you?
Intense, very intense. It was just, it was not the perfect timing because we got hit by COVID really badly in November. And I've only just recovered more or less from it and had this first week of January for recording 2 albums, which were 50 tracks, right? It's a little crazy, but being a mother with 2 smaller kids, 4 and 7, I do not have plenty of time at my hands to go away for a longer period of time. And I picked a studio that's quite far away. I think you know the sound engineer Ralf Kleemann. He's also a harpist, and I wanted him to record my pieces. So I needed to go very, very far. It's 800 or more kilometers to go there. And I knew I can't do that twice. I had so many pieces I couldn't decide. Okay, so I said, I'm gonna record 2 CDs. It's crazy, but I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna do it in one sitting because then I'm away only once. And I can only do it when my husband is at home. So his company is closed always between Christmas and the beginning of January. So I had to do it then, no matter if I'm fit or if I'm still a little sick. Otherwise, I would not have had the chance to do it again. I don't think I would have had the chance to do it this year. So yeah,
Yeah.
it
Or
was
you have to
pretty.
wait until December again, which will be a long, long time from now.
Yeah, or cancel our family holiday for it.
Mm,
And I think that's not fair for the kids, right?
that's true.
So,
Yeah.
so I did it and I'm really glad I did it and it turned out well in the end and I was recovering from COVID and I was in a good shape then.
Yeah. And you have a very generous number of tracks in this album. 24, if I remember correctly. Is it 24?
Yes, it's 24. Yes.
Yeah. So there's
I
plenty of
know
music in there for us to
because
enjoy.
I couldn't decide which pieces I should take. This is just the best of pieces. I have so many pieces. A lot of them are not recorded. Yeah, so I needed to decide on the pieces, and this is yeah, I couldn't do less. But the
Yeah.
pieces are not so long. It's 3 or 4 minutes. It's not 7-minute pieces. So the overall time is 60 minutes. I think that's a perfect length to listen to an album.
It is. It is. And I can play it in my bathroom when I'm in having a bubble bath. I can play it like I'm in my own spa. I can
That's
spend an
cool.
hour in there
Yes,
easily.
that,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, you have a bubble bath. That's so nice.
Right? See,
Yeah,
the mother in me is telling me I need that. Thinking back about how you make this album and the previous one, do you see a difference in that experience? Because this one was made during the pandemic, wasn't it?
Sure, there's a big difference. I mean, it was really complicated to, uh, well, slide in the recordings in between lockdowns. So this was recorded just shortly before the 2020 lockdown in winter, which made it really stressful because I didn't know until the end, can I go there? And of course, you had to test. So what do you do if you're positive? Huh, you had to cancel everything, right? But there was one thing that was actually easier on the last album, which is I had plenty of time to work on it afterwards. And I couldn't do a release concert, which is also a lot of work, but I could focus much better because I didn't have school, kindergarten, whatnot going on, birthdays, and a full gigging calendar. So that was easier, but still, I mean, I don't want to go back there. Nobody does, right? What
Mm.
was completely different this time with this album was that, as I said before, Ralf Kleemann was the sound engineer and he's a harpist himself. So I could ask for advice, and I knew he knows what he's talking about. Like sometimes I'm like, should I play that a little slower? How do you feel about it? But then what do I do about the muffling here? Does it ring too much? Really harpist stuff that no other sound engineer can answer or can feel the same way I did. So I felt really understood there. That was really great. And besides, I was really taken care of so perfectly. His partner Nadja Birkenstock also was around, and they cooked for me, and I was not allowed to help because they were afraid I'd cut myself.
See,
So I was
harpist, from one harpist to another. Don't hurt your finger.
exactly, I was just sitting there, and I might have shared too many anecdotes out of my life, but I hope they're okay with that. It was funny. Yeah, and the fun thing is, or the interesting thing is, only now I understood that there was one big, big feeling that was so palpable there, and that was the sense of being at home, which is also the topic of my album. And it just fit perfectly, but I didn't know that before. It just, I don't know. Now that I reflected on it, I was like, okay, that was meant to be. It turned out so perfect. Everything was just the correct time at the correct place.
I remember interviewing Ralph, and when I learned that he plays the harp and then he does all these other things, I'm like, you're gonna be in so much demand because you know how to do everything that pretty much any harpist would be interested in learning. You can make video, you can record, and you know what you're doing when you're recording the harp because you play it. So I think you were in really good hands. And you're right, like I think that experience translate into your recording really well because when I listen
Absolutely.
to it, it's so homey. It just feels right.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good vibrations are really important for the process of recording and feeling comfortable, yeah, and at home.
I think so too. Now you also teach harp, and in your website you have said that in your opinion, emotion outweighs perfection, and the joy of playing over staging, and the individual path over competitive CVs. Google Translate told me that, so I hope it actually translate more or less into
I
the
think Google
feeling
Translate
that
did
you want to
very
do.
well on that.
Perfect.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell us about
yeah,
that philosophy and how do you as a harp teacher help others find their own path in their joy for the harp?
this is so interesting because when you read that, you'd think I'm a non-competitive person, but I am really. If you try and beat me at a board game, I will go nuts. But everything was always competition, school and just everything. And I excelled there. I was great at school and I had good marks and yeah, everything was fine. So when I went to university then and decided to study music, suddenly this passion of mine turned into something very competitive, and I felt that it's gonna ruin it for me. So I quit. I quit music because the competition was so overwhelming that I felt the passion waning. And as the harp had always been my companion for a very long time, I could not afford losing that companion. So I quit music. And yeah, sometimes I think, well, I should have done it because then I'd had a proper CV and I'd had a music exam. And sometimes it's really difficult now not to have that exam. But what happened right after I quit the music studies is I published my first album. You know, the home recorded non-professional one, but I think it was 12 or more tracks, only original music. And I think that showed that the competition destroyed the creativity. Because right afterwards, creativity was flowing out of me. So in my opinion, it's really, really important to live in agreement with your inner voices, even if your choices are unpopular or do not unlock every potential in you. But that's just one point of view. And since then, I've met so many people that started hating the instruments during music studies. And either haven't touched them ever since or, well, don't really enjoy playing in front of people anymore. Yeah, and in my opinion, music never was meant to be perfect, but it was meant to express emotions. And I think it's very difficult to be a perfect performer and still be connected with your own emotions. That's just my opinion. And besides, I'm always more interested in those CVs that are not perfect, but a little different. Also, the music that is not perfect, but a little different is more interesting to me. That's just my point of view. So everyone has a different view on that. So as a teacher, what I try to do is I try to involve my students in the track we're taking, right? Do they want to play lever harp? Do they want to play pedal harp? If they're kids, okay, they might not be able to take that decisions on their own, but what do the parents say? So I'm constantly in communication. They can also have a say in what pieces do we play, what style of music talks to them emotionally, right? This is so important. And I have a lot of adult students where there is no goal of being the perfect harp player. It's just that they really love the sound of the instrument, and typically they already have some sort of genre that they want to go to. So I help them develop their musical style. Still, well, they still need to learn the technique, right? Because otherwise they're gonna have pain or they're gonna have troubles at some point. They can't develop anymore if you don't have a proper technique. But besides that, I think it's very important that they know what they want, and I help them find out what they want.
And that is so important because yes, technique is important, but at some point, as in my opinion, you have sufficient technique right, that you can play, then the next question become, well, who I want to be as a musician. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a natural progression. So when a teacher is able to help their students find their style, so they can not only play it well but play it in something that they resonate with, I think that is very important, speaking as a student, harp student myself, right? So kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
And you also teach a lot of workshop, and one of them particularly caught my eye is called Flow My Heart. And you have mentioned the flow state earlier, and I am also a big fan of thinking about how do we get into that flow state where we're just enjoying the moment to the point where basically we don't want to go to the bathroom because we just love what we're doing so much. And there's something about, in that flow that I think is so critical when it comes to music. So tell us about, your idea when it comes to flowing with the harp. What does that look like? What is it that people are learning from you? And maybe how does that flow translate into what you do right now as a musician?
I'm really enthusiastic about this topic. Ever since I came across the psychological phenomenon of flow, I think it was described by Csikszentmihalyi. Ever since I heard from him back in school and in my studies, as I am also psychologically trained as a teacher, um, I was really interested in that topic. And maybe 3 years ago, I myself joined a workshop by Maria Busquet is her name. And she described the flow state for musicians, but on a very general level, because it was for all musicians. And ever since, this topic has started working in my brain. Not like consciously, but unconsciously. I think I was looking for ways to get to that flow state where, as you said, you completely forget about time and about physical needs. You don't go to the toilet anymore. You don't feel hungry. You don't feel tired. You are just there and then in the moment. And yeah, this is basically the flow state. We see that flow state in athletes a lot. Runner's high is very famous for that. But also in kids. When kids play, they as a mother, you can call them and tell them, hey, dinner's ready. No answer, because they're so focused on what they're doing. And this flow state will enhance happiness in your life. So it's really important that we talk about that flow state and that we know how to get to that flow state as often as possible in our lives, because it's important for our mental health and important for our resilience. And in a time where we are under a lot of pressure and we are always stressed and everything has to be super quick, I think that's really, really important that we take care of those topics. So, I told you about the spa gig. I improvised a lot there. And when I improvise, I am getting to that flow state. So all I needed to do for that workshop was reflect what am I doing there and why is this working? With the theoretical knowledge I had from university and school and from the workshop I attended, I just structured the techniques I found out, or the let's call it techniques or the patterns that bring me to a flow state. So it's completely empirical. It's not, there's no scientific base or something. But so far it works. I'm in the middle of the workshop right now. It's a 8-month workshop and we meet once a month. And my students, they write me messages and tell me, well, you know, I have been playing the harp for an hour now. It was really flowing. So I'm super, super happy that it works. Well, what I do basically is we have to have a little theory before that. For example, the last lesson was about hemispheres and how we can try to work with both of them and make them synchronated as much as possible. So what I do is I invent patterns or little exercises for the harp, and I give my students the sheet music, and usually I have an easier version and a more complex version, because you can, all of those exercises you can do on different levels, right? And then we play together. Would be nice, of course, to have a workshop here, a live workshop, but then again, it's easier on the internet because I have students all over Germany and Austria and Switzerland even. And then we try and see and we evaluate the exercises. Everyone can notate, okay, this was a flowy exercise or not so flowy exercise. And I encourage them to just use those exercises in their daily or whatever harp routine to get started. There's no pressure because there's no right or wrong. It's just basically figures or patterns. And if it's not the exact notes I wrote down, so what? So it also enables them to improvise, which is the goal, right? I just give them impulses and ideas to just play without pressure. No, there's no goal except for play. Play the harp.
That sounds amazing. Are you going to offer it in English one day? Because I think that would be something very interesting for a lot of
Yeah,
us.
you are not the first to ask, and yes, why not? I think
I think it
there
would be
might be
very interesting.
there might be an audience, and yeah, it should work. I mean, it's always a little complicated time-wise because of the different time zones. When would be a good time to do that workshop? Of course, it's recorded so you can watch it when you want, but still, it's always nicer to have it live, right? And
I
to be
think
able
so
to ask
too.
questions or to interact with the other ones. It's really a nice group we have there.
That's
And I
true.
think I'm super, super happy with how that workshop goes.
Well, you're awake now. I'm awake right now. So this obviously is a good time.
This is the
So
time.
I
Yes,
am going to ask you at the end of the interview how we can find your workshop album and all of that. So check the video description later for some link, or in the end of this interview. I'm gonna come back to ask you about that because I think that is something that a lot of harpists could benefit from, just enjoying
absolutely.
playing and nothing else.
I think so too. Yeah.
That's great. Now, I often ask my guests who have sheet music to suggest some music for people who have not played your pieces before to play.
Oh,
Can
that's
you
super nice.
recommend, right? I think it's a great way to discover new music. That's how I end up learning so many different music.
Yes, you're right.
Right. So, can you recommend something to perhaps someone that is more like a beginner or intermediate, and maybe something for someone who is a little bit more advanced? What would you suggest them to try out?
So, yeah, I published 3 volumes of sheet music.
Oh,
Um,
look at that. This is the same heart.
yeah, it's the same artist, but
Same
not the same
artist,
heart.
different hearts.
All
Very good.
different hearts. Um, but the same artist, and she also did all the calligraphies. by hand. Just for me, it's very unique. Yeah. Um, this is called Heartstrings in English, and I have an English version, but it's only a PDF version because it's for some parts of the world it's a little complicated to ship it there. So this is why I have a PDF version. And for those who don't like printed stuff anymore. In my volume 1, um, there's one very, very easy piece, which still is super, super nice to listen to, and which also uses a technique I teach in the flow workshop. This is called Rainbow Bridge. In German, it's Regenbogenbrücke. So if you're a beginner in your first year, you can easily learn that, and it's here in volume 1. Then I'm going to show you 3 pieces because I have 3 volumes. Volume 2, I would suggest that you learn or you check out Bodenseewell. I already published the sheet music to Bodenseewell, which is the name of the new album, right? In a solo version in here. So this is, yeah, if you maybe have been learning the harp for 3 years, something around that, in intermediate level, you can play that. And I also have something a little more complicated for the more advanced players. This is the only book that is suitable for pedal harps only, but also single action pedal harp. It's not that common in North America, but it's quite common here. And I suggest you pick Jumping for Joy. It's a very short but really fun piece to play.
Jumping for Joy. I like that title.
Well, the German title is Löweneckerchen, which means something completely different, but the connotation is the same. The story about Löweneckerchen, it's a fairy tale actually, where this name appears. And the situation I had in mind was when the kid reunites with the father and is jumping for joy. So this is why we decided I had that book translated for the PDF version, professionally translated, not by me, but by a professional translator. By the way, the husband of Christine Warmhold. You also interviewed her. So yeah, it's a small world. Yeah. So we decided on that title.
It's a lovely community. The harp community is full of wonderful people, and I just love the collaboration that happens and how small,
Yes.
but at the same time, it's such a big world too. Like there's so much out there, and we're also so interconnected. This is what I love about conversation like this because I get to know the different people in the different corners of the harp world, and then they often know each other in some way and have worked with each other in some way, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I really love that too. And that is so, yeah, that's the thing that has changed the most from when I learned the harp back then. I already pointed that out, but I enjoy that so much being part of that community and the international community. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And now we get to, travel to other countries for a workshop. I know plenty of people who would do that. Whereas in the past, you won't even know about workshops that are
No,
happening outside of your
no,
hometown.
nobody called you on the phone and said,
Right?
hello, there's a workshop here.
Yeah. Well, speaking of workshop books and albums, where can we find all of these goodies?
Ha! Well, the go-to place is my website, obviously. I think you can
Yes,
also
I
shop
will put the link in
there.
the description as well.
Exactly. For the North American harp players, you can also get my sheet music on Harp column. I think that's an easy way to instantly download it. And of course, you can follow me on social media or YouTube. I have a lot of lovely videos on YouTube displaying those pieces. So if you are learning by watching a video, you can use them to go through the sheet music and learn a new piece.
Yeah, it's again, that is not something that exists when we were little kids learning music. We have to look at the sheet and hope for the best. But now I just love that I can listen to either an album or video and get a sense of the music. So I really love
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. Well, I have to ask you this question because I love your new album so much. Do you have plans to publish the sheet music for that album at some point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
I will have to
I
keep an eye out.
already notated all of the pieces except for one, which I still need to do. But then it's not done. You need to proofread it, you need to lay out it, and you need to finance it. And you need to have the time for that. So right now, yeah, I hope to be able to present it to you this summer. Let's hope for the best.
Yes. And if you're in the audience, if you're also interested in the sheet music, follow Lana's on social media. I'm sure you're going to find out if and when it's going to get published. And
Absolutely.
meanwhile, I am going to pick up the intermediate level book because I want to play the title track in your new album so much. I didn't know it was in that book, but now that I do, I'm gonna have to give it a
Yeah,
go.
it's already published. Yeah.
That's
There
awesome.
will be there will be the duo version in the new book
New book.
because I on the new CD it's a duo version I did with myself because Ralph had to record and yeah, I did it all my own, the playing. Um, so I'm gonna publish the duo version as well, but you can already play the solo version.
That's fantastic.
It is.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time to share your music journey and everything about this
Oh,
now new
you.
album with
Thank
us.
you for having me and inviting me. That's super, super nice.
Yeah, I
I'm,
hope one
I
day I'll
feel
get to
honored.
meet you in person too.
Oh,
You
yes,
know,
I
that
hope
would
so
be
too.
that would be so cool. Maybe I need to start with convincing you for a Flow My Heart workshop in English. That would be step one.
That is definitely step one. Yes. I think I'll think about that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of the day.
You too.